In this video we shall discuss relational model in more details. We've already seen this definition, so once again the main idea that relational model is a data model based on set of relations. Here we see such relations and a sample of a relational database model. There is an interesting fact that relational model was introduced in 1969. So for more than 50 years this approach remains the leading data manipulation approach in the world. 50 years is an eternity for information technologies, and yet relational model proved to be the best for the whole time. Relational model describes so-called three aspects: data structures, data integrity rules, and data manipulation rules. And it is important to mention that there was no such approach before relational model that was describing all that three aspects. But with relational model we've got a unified approach describing all those three aspects. We absolutely have to mention two major facts about relational model. The first fact is that relational model is logical. So we use some schema or we use SQL code, and we do not have to program the low-level data operations. All those low-level data operations are handled by DBMS, and we only have to create some schema, some SQL code, so the database development has become quicker and easier. The second fact tells us that relational model support both declarative and imperative approaches. So this is declarative one. This is classical SQL. With declarative approach, we just telling DBMS to create a table with a certain set of fields and so on. And we do not control the process of table creation. The DBMS selects it by itself. So we do not describe process, we just describe the desirable result. But with imperative approach, like in classical programming language, we have to describe the set of actions. While declarative approach and SQL language is rather compatible between different DBMSs, the imperative approach is not compatible between different DBMSs. And this incompatibility is so deep that sometimes it's impossible to just rewrite some code and transfer a database from one DBMS to another, because in one DBMS there may be some structures, some set of supported operations, while in another DBMS there is no some object, no some operation, and so it's impossible to transfer the database. We have to rework it, rewrite it from scratch sometimes. Let's review relational model pros and cons. Speaking about pros, of course relational model is based on simple set of basic structures, and the whole relational approach is built on that simple structures. That's good. Relational model uses strict mathematical approaches that allows us to make calculations, to make mathematical experiments, and so on. And as it was said earlier, relational model isolates us from internal structures, internal operations. All those internal operations are handled by DBMS, and we only have to concentrate on the database modeling. Speaking about cons, we have to say that relational databases usually require a lot of memory and CPU power. That's true. Some alternatives require less memory and/or CPU power. Relational model, like many others, is hard to deal in case of large databases. This is not a unique for relational model. Other models have the same issue, but nevertheless relational model also does. And the next issue is also rather common for a lot of DBMS models. Some structures, like trees, graphs and so on, are hard to implement in relational model. Okay, but if we take, for instance, Graph database, Graph DBMS. Some structures are hard to implement there too. So once again, the miracle did not happen, and relational model did not provide us with some magical approach. But still, remember that for 50 plus years, relational model remains the most common approach for database design in the world. Most databases today are relational ones. And relational DBMSs become more and more powerful, get more functionality, and so on. So, there are no reasons to think that relational model will somehow retire in foreseeable future. And one can say that for decades we'll deal with relational databases.